say welcome to everybody, and I do hope you're able to pop onto this call and that you can. Oh, and what I would love you to do is to put in questions, because this is a topic that it's like my home topic. This is something I do a lot of, and I would love to have your questions because they're always really interesting. So pop those comments in there and I will endeavour to see them on the various technology around here. So this is a talk about mental imagery and visualization. And so in a few minutes, I'm going to try and introduce you to your own mental imagery and to get you to do a little bit of practice and to see how you can change mental images if you don't like them, because they are yours. And one of the things that is always surprises me is that children and adults have had mental images all their life and don't realize what they can actually use them for. So that's what I'm trying to do today. Visualizing and mental imagery is my day job, if you like. I use mental imagery a lot for health, and also it's a vital skill for understanding learning differences, and that's what I talk about most of the time. We all have the skills, but we don't necessarily know how to use them, so I'm just going to introduce you to your own. If you're parents or grandparents, you might find it really useful and a really interesting conversation to have with youngsters that you might in your family. And if you don't use them, maybe it's something that you lose over time, but the good news is that because of the plasticity of your brain, we can always get them back again. So I'm just going to show you a couple of slides today, because this is all about mental imagery. So I had to resort to showing you pictures today, because otherwise I would be having difficulty. So what do we use mental imagery for? We would use it to remember who your parents are. Really useful skill. At 6 weeks old, if you can remember that with any children in your family, the nurse may well have asked you if your child smiles at you. The idea of that is that the medics know that the child's eyes are pointing in the same direction. And from my point of view, I know that they can recognize you, which means that it's even at 6 weeks old, they have a picture of you in their head. And if you wore a pink curly wig, assuming that that isn't what your hair normally looks like, they would probably have cried, because that doesn't match the picture they have in their head. They use mental imagery for recognizing their favorite toys. You know, they will know the difference between one toy and another and which one's their favorite because they know what it looks like. What do you think an elephant looks like? Just for a moment, think to yourself, what's an elephant look like? We don't have to be an artist to answer this question. It's got 4 legs, it's got a tail, it's got a trunk, it's got a couple of horns, it's got a couple of eyes, it's got a couple of big ears. All of those things, that's what an elephant looks like. All of those things you will have known. How did you learn to walk and develop a new skill? So learning to walk, you tend to copy people. You look at what they're doing and think, I'd like to do that. And so sooner or later, after a few mistakes, you learn how to walk. And developing any new skill for doing all sorts of hobbies and learning, then you're doing the same thing. You're copying what somebody else is doing. Do you recognize your house? Most people recognize where they live, or sorry, house or flat. Most people recognize where they live, or else they would be lost. And so you're using your mental imagery to recognize which house or flat in the street you're living in. Then you've got past memories. Sorry about the typo there. Past memories. You've got, think of a holiday that you've been on before now. Was it a good holiday? Was it a bad holiday? What was it like? Think of Christmas. What was that like? Think of what was the best thing that you did at Christmas. Think of your friends. Think of your family. And lots of people have really different mental imagery. Some people have unbelievable 36, like watching a 36-inch color TV. That's not very common, but some children do that. Some people have black and white pictures. Some people have them way over in the distance so they can't really see them. Some of them, if you say picture a cat, they go, oh, I can't picture a cat. And I go, well, what's a cat got? Legs, feet, you know? And I, oh, yeah, it's got that. Oh, now I've got Garfield. And so some people see cartoons. So there's all sorts of different ways you use mental imagery, and that's what I'm going to try and explain to you, and really just to introduce you to your own. Of course, some people may have a lot of mental imagery going on. You may see their eyes flashing around. That normally means that they get a bit distracted as a child, and so there's so much going on in their head. And to improve your pictures, which you're going to be doing in a moment, first thing to do is breathe. Breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your nose, right down into your diaphragm. Get yourself feeling really grounded and look up. You'll see often with me, I look up. Now, when some people think that looking up and looking away from the person you're talking to is really a problem, but actually with highly visual people, they're so often looking up because that's where they have their best pictures. And so you'll probably find me looking up a lot. And it's not because I want to avoid the camera, but it's just a habit of mine. So what do we use visualization for? One is art. Of course, if you're a painter, then you might be painting something you can see, or you might be painting something from your imagination. Sports, all sorts of sports use visualization. For example, the lad there who's trying to kick a football into the net, if he sees where the ball's going before he kicks it, he's got a much better chance of it landing in the right place. The same thing is true for scoring goals in football. So if any little kids are going to listen to this later, do tell them if they see the ball hit the back of the net before they actually kick it, there's a much better chance that they will score a goal. There's the weightlifter there. If he sees himself that he can lift those weights, if he sees in a very positive way, I can see myself with those above my head, he's going to stand a better chance. What else can we do? Oh, creatives. We've got loads of creatives who can just imagine things. They can, for example, that house at the bottom there, they might be an architect and they might be able to draw the front of it. But architects typically can open up a house, look at the inside of it, turn it around, look at it from the top, the bottom, different angles. They can do all this stuff in their mental imagery. Garden designers are another amazing group of people. Garden designers can look at a patch of grass and go, this is how I would like to design it. There is a program on TV at the moment about two garden designers vying for doing their designs, and you can see that they can actually see what this thing is going to look like when it's finished, and so then all they've got to do is build it to make it match what they've got in their head. There is garden designers also I'm always very impressed with, because they can see what it's going to look like on day one, and then they can see what it's going to look like 6 months later or a year later in their mind's eye. So they'll know how all these plants grow up. So we all have pictures, and it's a question of how do we use them. And I'm not suggesting anybody is a Michelangelo, but there is a story about Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel, that he was employed to paint the Sistine Chapel, and he came into the building and he sat in the corner looking at the corner of the building on his own for a fortnight. And they were getting really annoyed with him because he wasn't doing anything. And so once he'd done all the design in his head, he then got up and painted the Sistine Chapel. So the question I always ask people is, who's in control of your pictures? Because you can do a lot more you can be in a lot more control for your pictures than you might think, and you can change them. Let's just have a look at another couple of things. Reading a book. When you read a book, are you making up pictures of what's in the book, and so you can remember it? This is a really useful skill when you're in school for doing comprehension. and I did a webinar on that yesterday. But just for the moment, just think about the pictures you're making up in your head. And when you've read a book, do you ever go to the cinema, and when we could, and see that film? Or do you watch something on television which might be about that book, and you go, that's not like it was in the book? And what's happened is that you've been making up one picture while you've been reading the book, and then you go to the cinema or you watch a film and it's not exactly the same, and so you see the disconnect between them. That's a really common thing to do. It's great for recalling what's in a book. I used to be a project manager, and I used to find that and a software engineer, I used to find all sorts of bits and pieces. I've got a sort of jigsaw puzzle brain, and I can find all sorts of bits and pieces to how things fit together. And that's a really great skill for problem solving, and is why I do the work I do on learning differences. And so I want to read you a couple of, actually 3 little bits, just to help you improve your own ability to visualize. So your experience is going to be exactly what your experience is. Don't worry about it. I just want to encourage you. So this is a story that was in one of my early books, and it's got what I call stage management for the brain in it, which means at the end of every sentence, I'm helping you with suggesting what the picture might be. Now, you can be something different. It's completely up to you, but it's just what I call stage management for the brain. And don't forget to put any questions in that you have, because I'll get round to answering those in a minute. Right, there were no cars on the big wide roads of the city centre. Think of that picture. But the pavements were filling up with crowds, held back by bright tape. Adjust your picture to put the crowds on the pavement. People were just standing, waiting expectantly, gently pressing to the front. Adjust the crowd to standing still if you had them walking about. Some motorbikes could be seen in the distance. Add your version of the motorbikes in. But they were coming quite slowly, and behind them was a group of people. Slow your motorbikes down and add in the group. You could hear distant cheering, and as the group got nearer, you could see they were running. Adjust your picture again. You could even see people cheering as they leant out of the windows of the buildings in downtown Edmonton in Canada. Adjust your picture again to put the word Edmonton in so you can remember it, perhaps on a banner across the road. If you've been to Canada, you can make it more real. If not, just imagine. It was the opening day of World Athletics Championships 2001. How about putting up some flags around the lampposts advertising World Athletics 2001? As the athletes got nearer, the crowd went frantic as the Canadian runner sped past. The Canadian flag has a red leaf on a white background. Put that in your picture too. There was every nationality, and see how you can remember these: Ethiopians, Spanish, Greek, Americans, and English. The group streamed past so quickly, surrounded by bikes and cars, and with an enormous cheer from the crowd, they were gone, away into the dusk of the city centre, with another 20 miles to the end of the marathon. Can you put the dusk into your picture? Perhaps you also including a 20-mile marker post on the side of the road. Can you recall the noise of the crowd? So I'll just ask you a couple of questions. Can you remember what the event was? Can you remember what year it was? And can you remember what the Canadian flag looks like? So that's just an idea to start helping you build up your pictures yourself. And I'm going to read you something else now from Harry Potter, because a lot of the children's stories are really good for visualizing. They're written in very creative text, which means that it's really difficult for you not to start visualizing. So Hagrid, this is the story of how the dinosaur was born from an egg. Hagrid greeted them, looking flushed and excited. "It's nearly out," he ushered them inside. The egg was lying on the table. There were deep cracks in it. Something was moving inside. A funny clicking noise was coming from it. Click, click, click. They all drew up their chairs up to the table and watched with bated breath. All at once there was a scraping noise and the egg split open. A baby dragon flopped onto the table. It wasn't exactly pretty. Harry thought it looked more like a crumpled black umbrella. Its spiny wings were huge compared with its skinny jet black body, and it had a long snout with wide nostrils, stubs of horns, and bulging orange eyes. It sneezed, and a couple of sparks flew out of its snout. "Isn't it beautiful?" Hagrid murmured. I read that story 10 years ago, and I can still remember it almost word perfect because of the mental images that I created. And I'm just going to give you a third short one from Roald Dahl, and this is James and the Giant Peach. And again, these are stories that are written in very creative text, which makes it much easier. And one of the things I should have asked you to just think about was that some people think they can't picture things. In point of fact, the more you do it, the better it gets. And even if I say to you, don't picture an elephant, you've probably pictured an elephant. So mentioning the word of an object, like an elephant, will immediately trigger the right part of your brain where you keep all your pictures. So take another breath and relax. And this is when the giant peach has started rolling down the hill. The peach had broken out of the garden and was over the edge of the hill, rolling and bouncing down the steep slope at a terrific pace. Faster and faster and faster it went, and the crowds of people who were climbing up the hill suddenly caught sight of this terrible monster plunging down upon them, and they screamed and shattered right and left as it went hurtling by. At the bottom of the hill it charged across the road, knocking over a telegraph pole, flattening two parked cars as it went. Then it rushed madly across about 20 fields, breaking down all the fences and hedges in its path. It went right through the middle of the herd of fine Jersey cows, and then through a flock of sheep, and then through the paddock full of horses, and then through a yard full of pigs, and soon the whole countryside was a seething mass of panic-stricken animals stampeding in all directions. The peach was still going at a tremendous speed with no sign of slowing down. And about a mile further on it came to a village. Down the main street of the village it rolled, with people leaping frantically out of its path, right and left. And at the end of the street it went crashing down through a wall of an enormous building and out the other side, leaving two gaping holes in the brickwork. This building happened to be a famous factory where they made chocolate, and almost at once a great river of warm melted chocolate came pouring out of the holes in the factory wall. A minute later this sticky brown mess was flowing through every street in the village, oozing under the doors of the houses and into people's shops and gardens. Children were wading in it up to their knees, and soon some were trying to swim in it, and all of them were sucking it into their mouths in great greedy gullops and shrieking with joy. Eventually, after all its excitement, of course, it went into the sea as well. So there we go. Lots of things you can do with mental imagery, and if you read a lot, it's a great idea to actually use that. So, whoops. So when you don't like the pictures you've got, which also happens to people occasionally, just be playful with your images and tell them who is in control. You can change the color of them, you can change the location, you can change the size, you can make them silly, and you must always have a safe ending. So for example, if you think of a spider, and I know some people don't like spiders, just think how big it is, what color it is, and where is it. So I've just thought of a spider which is right in front of me, big and black and with some big horns coming out the front of it. So if I move it far away, straight through the wall in front of me, make it pink and tiny, it's changed completely in my head. So, and then I could bring it back and I could turn it into a ladybird. I could give it some wings and those nice spotty wings and make it into a ladybird, so the ladybird can sit on the windowsill and wave at me. That's fine. So it's really important to make friends with your mental imagery. And you can teach this to any child who's anxious. If they can make friends with the things they're being anxious about, then it will actually help them. And they're your pictures to change as you wish. If you are catastrophizing, if people are highly visual, they may catastrophize over their pictures. So they need to really take control of them and make them into the pictures that they would like. If, for example, you've fallen over walking along a path and you just imagine walking along that path again and you think you're going to fall over, you're more than likely going to. What you've got to do is think about standing tall, breathing, walking straight and going straight along the path. And I must admit, some of the imagery we've been given on about COVID-19 at the moment, I really hate. I would like those pictures to be sent off to the moon and dumped there, because it keeps reminding people about these nasty looking alien things, which I don't think is a good idea for their mental health. So if you could change them into something funny, what would they be? Give them legs, give them wings, do anything you like to them. They're your pictures, but you don't have to keep re-embedding the ones that you're being shown on the newspapers and the media and the television. And to finish off, whoops, sorry, my picture keeps going backwards. To finish off, this is a picture I drew recently. Whilst I've been on lockdown, I've been teaching myself to draw more cartoons. And so this is a picture I drew of some birds in a tree, and I looked at it when I'd done it, and I'm sorry, it's not very good because it's blown up bigger than it was on that screen. But when I looked at it, I went, the birds know how to do social distancing. We've got a lot to learn from them. So as the lockdown lifts, I'd just like to give you a couple of suggestions, is that when you're washing your hands, when you're, as we're being told to, can you remind yourself to breathe in and out through your nose, right down to the bottom of your belly, and to stay grounded and relaxed. So let me see, have we got any questions? Right, I'd love some questions about what I've been doing. Georgina, who I dropped off a book for last week, has read the whole thing, and she said highly recommended. So if anybody else wants a copy of You Too Can Do Health, just message me and I will deliver one in Redbourne. Let me just see whether we've got what questions. Can you lose your ability to visualize? That's a question that I often get. I think if you don't use it a lot, then you may lose it. But as I said earlier, the big benefit of your brain is that the plasticity of your brain, and you can get it back again. I had very fast moving mental images, so I couldn't really see them for many, many years. And I've managed to slow them down, and I can now see them. And the more I'm doing, more I'm reading and remembering things from visually from what I read, the better it becomes. So never too late. Some people would say they've got too many pictures and they get overwhelmed. Very simple solution to that is breathe. Reduce your stress. Breathe in through your nose, out through your nose, right down to the bottom of your belly. You can take a deep breath right down to the bottom of your lungs, and you will find as you get more grounded, your pictures will slow down, and you can start turning them off if you want to. You know, the Most people's television has got a remote control on it where you can switch it off. Try switching off with a remote control some of your pictures if you don't like them. I've had the most extraordinary results with doing that, is that people can do it. Once they get grounded and relaxed, they can just switch off the ones they don't like and switch on the ones they do like. Right. Oh, good question, Peter. Do you know what percentage of people see in colour? No, I don't. I haven't actually thought about that one. I definitely dream in colour, which always surprises me because I don't think I visualise in colour so well. But I've always dreamt in colour, and but it does. Let me just say, it doesn't matter. The more you do it, the more you ask yourself, if you want to picture in colour, then just start studying some colour pictures. Here you go, James and the Giant Peach in colour, right? Start looking at the great big spider and just seeing if you can picture it in green. And so start adding colours to your pictures, and you will probably find that you can actually do it. But don't forget what I said originally is some people have got glorious 36-inch colour TVs. Some people have got black and white. Some people have got just know what something looks like. One of the things I ask adults is, do you know what your car looks like? Can you find it in a car park? And what colour is it? And sometimes they'll go, yeah, I know I can find it, but I can't actually picture it. And I go, well, actually, hang on a second. Then try walking around your car and looking to see if it's got any dents and scratches on it. And so quite often they can go, oh yeah, it's got that dent. I mean, my car was hit in Waitrose several months ago, and it had a dent that big. I can still see that perfectly. And I can see the fact that my car was blue and it had got this white dent on it. But the very nice man in Waitrose car park did own up to it and left me his card. So that was all right. What else have I got to... if you've got scary pictures, dispatch them somewhere. With children, I tend to use whatever they like. But let me give you an example. If I say to somebody, what's the fastest thing you can think of? And they come out with a rocket ship or something, and I go, okay, put your picture in the rocket ship. So it's not in you anymore, it's in the rocket ship. We're now going to send this rocket ship off to the moon. It's gone to the moon. The rocket ship can drop your picture at the back of the moon. And at the moon, it can just find some buckets of confidence. So fill up your rocket ship with confidence, bring it back, drop it over your head. And quite often you see the child burst into smiles like, that's better, I've got rid of it. So you just have to be playful and do whatever you need to make friends with your mental imagery. Okay. Oh, I'll just mention on literacy, which is the thing I do an awful lot of, is that people who are good at reading and spelling are visualizing words. So if you think to yourself, just for a moment, I want to spell the word lion, can I see the word lion? That is how we teach children to become better at literacy, is by visualizing words. They're teaching phonics in school, which is great, but the last stage should be to move on to what they call word recognition. So you actually see the word. And the same thing is true of maths. To do maths, you need to be able to do maths successfully, mental maths is you need to be able to visualize numbers. Okay. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to those people who came on. Do put some hearts and things like that on when you come on Facebook, because then Facebook's algorithm actually tells other people about this. So if you put some thumbs up or some hearts or something and put messages in, then it gets more visibility. So this is the end of May's talks with Breathing in Air from me. I'm going to be back again next month with some different topics, and you're going to love some of them. And I'm going to have some guests along, I think, next month, because there's some topics that I'd like to cover that just really can be done in one session. So I'm going to invite some of those along and see what I can do. I laugh because one of them is about laughter. So thank you all very much, and look forward to seeing you next week.